Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's Pokemon GO discussion video. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the one and only Shadow Mewtwo. This Pokemon is going to be in Shadow Raids this weekend, and a lot of players are going to go after it. The reason for that is because Shadow Mewtwo is widely considered to be the best Pokemon in the game. This Pokemon is incredibly versatile considering it has a very diverse moveset, and a lot of players really like the fact that this Pokemon has a lot of uses throughout all varieties of gameplay. It can be really good for PvP, but especially really good for PvE content, like for Team Go Rocket battles and raid battles. This Pokemon is going to be incredibly useful. But there's a lot of discussions regarding whether or not you should purify this Pokemon. Well, let me tell you straight up, you should never purify Shadow Mewtwo, even if you can get yourself a 100% IV. Now, the reason for that is quite simple. Shadow Mewtwo deals an incredible amount of damage when it is a Shadow, just like every other Shadow Pokemon. It gets a 20% Shadow damage bonus, which means that if you have yourself even a 0% IV Shadow Mewtwo, it's still going to deal more damage theoretically compared to a 100% IV purified Mewtwo. This Pokemon is a hard hitter, and considering its diverse moveset, you will use it in a variety of different raids. In my opinion, this Pokemon should be kept Shadow, mainly because of just how powerful it is. But let's look at the counter argument. Why should you purify Shadow Mewtwo? Well, the simple fact is that it is eventually going to be getting a Mega Evolution. And the key thing here is that Shadow Mewtwo cannot Mega Evolve. You will need to purify it first. At least, that is what we are presumably thinking how it's going to work, considering that Mega Evolutions up to this point has worked just like that. I really hope that Niantic will throw us a curveball and we could possibly even Mega Evolve Shadow Mewtwo. How insane would that be? It would definitely make anyone who purified their Shadow Mewtwo's just kicking themselves, but I highly doubt they would do that considering just how OP that would be. But yeah, for the simple fact that it is eventually getting a Mega Evolution, a lot of players opt to purify their Shadow Mewtwo's in hopes of getting those 100% IVs or something close. And to that, I can understand. I mean, getting yourself a high IV Mewtwo is equally going to be as important as having yourself a Shadow Mewtwo. And if you have a whole bunch of Shadow Mewtwo's to spare, why not purify one or two of them in order to get super high IVs? That totally makes sense. On top of that, purifying a Pokemon also decreases the costs for powering up that Pokemon, so some players who are not able to raid and get a lot of XL candies and rare candies, I can understand why they would want to purify a Mewtwo in order to get that power up discount. But even with all that said, I still do not think it's worth it to purify a Shadow Mewtwo, especially if you lack a really good Shadow Mewtwo. When you get Shadow Mewtwo from Shadow Raids, there is an IV floor, so you will naturally get yourself higher than usual IVs for this Shadow Pokemon. And that very much means you could end up with something that would become a 100% if you were to purify it. I really do think you should hold off on doing that. One thing that you should consider is that when they do release Mega Mewtwo, chances are there will be Mega Mewtwo raids, and that means you're going to have encounters with regular Mewtwo. And for those of you who are not yet level 50, you probably didn't know this, but there is a free Mewtwo encounter at the end of the road. So if you're currently working your way towards level 50, just so you know, there is a Mewtwo that you can get through a special research. So you might end up getting yourself a 100% IV Mewtwo that way. So if you purify your best Shadow Mewtwo and then you end up getting a 100% Mewtwo later on, yeah, those are some of the things you should consider when you're thinking about purifying your Shadow Mewtwo. But let me say this, if you already have yourself a really good Shadow Mewtwo, I'm talking 93% or higher, then if you end up with a Shadow Mewtwo that could become a 100% Mewtwo when you purify it, then by all means you should go ahead and do so. But I do suggest you only do that if you have yourself a good IV Shadow Mewtwo already in your collection. Otherwise, you're going to regret it because having both of these is definitely going to be really good. But I would say that between the two, Shadow Mewtwo is going to have a lot more uses. Do keep in mind that yes, Mega Mewtwo is likely going to be a lot more powerful than Shadow Mewtwo, but it's going to be contingent on energy and all these sort of things. And considering how Mega Rayquaza was introduced, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of special thing you'll need to do in order to Mega Evolve evolve your Mewtwo's. And also don't forget that Mega Evolutions are temporary. They only last for 8 hours, whereas Shadow Mewtwo is always going to be Shadow. I mean, this rule applies to pretty much every Shadow Pokemon. The most veteran players will tell you that you should never purify Shadow Pokemon simply because the damage output is always going to be much greater. There's only 1 or 2 instances where I could say that purifying the Pokemon is to your advantage, but it's really for PvP purposes because getting return on that Pokemon can sometimes make it a lot more powerful. But in general, the rule of thumb should be that you should always keep Shadow Pokemon a Shadow Pokemon so that you could get the highest damage output, and Shadow Mewtwo definitely falls in line with that rule. It's definitely going to be one of your most used Pokemon, and the reason why I say that is because my Shadow Mewtwo is one of my most used Pokemon, and I do think the amount of power that it brings to your arsenal is definitely something you should not ignore. Shadow Mewtwo by itself is incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable. Make sure you focus on getting yourself a high IV Shadow Mewtwo before you consider purifying one in order to get a 100% IV regular Mewtwo. Have both in your collection, that should be your goal, and if you're going to choose between the two, again, choose Shadow Mewtwo. Do not purify it. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. I really hope the things that I said in this video are going to be helpful, especially for this weekend. We are going to be getting Shadow Mewtwo in Shadow Raids, so you should definitely do as many of those as you can because, like I said, there is an IV floor with these Shadow Raids, so you're likely going to get yourself a high IV. Once you do, then start farming for the Shadow Mewtwo that you plan to purify for a 100% IV. But let me know your thoughts down below, what you think about Shadow Mewtwo. Is it a Pokemon that you should purify? I would like to hear the arguments. Or is this a Pokemon that you should keep Shadow? Definitely say why down below in the comment section, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be insightful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, the best way you could do so is by becoming a paid Patreon member. If you click on the links below, it'll take you to my Patreon page, and if you become a paid member, that's how you get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a different way, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Alright, and with all that said, I am Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.